Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Gentlemen, got the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, who's seen more Timberwolves basketball going. You saw Timberwolves basketball in the Metrodome in 1989.
Hell yeah.
I
saw several games. I saw the first game, the first home game against the Bulls, right field. Couldn't see a thing.
Right field.
Michael Jordan looked like an ant.
Did we leave the baggie up or did we put the baggie down for extra seats?
I think they put it down, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
The best seats I had were for a Valentine's Day game, 80. So the first year was 89. So it would have been 90, I guess. Del Curry and the Charlotte Hornets in town.
Wow.
It was, and I looked at the lineup way back like 6 months ago, and it was just hilarious. The names that you forget that you saw.
That was like, because the Hornets were new in 88, right?
Around that time. Yeah. It was who came in? Orlando?
The Heat and the Hornets, and then the Magic and the Wolves.
Wolves, yes.
In back-to-back years, right?
But I had the seats, so they the basketball court at that time was first base to left field, okay? And what they did was they built temporary seating around the court on like risers for like really good seats.
Yeah.
And I had those seats. And so I told Dawn, my girlfriend at the time, we're going to go for Valentine's Day.
Listen, honey.
Hornets
Del Curry
Wolves
is
game.
going to be there. And by the way, Del Curry has some of the most powerful sperm in all of America.
Yes. Well,
you're not going to believe what he's going to procreate.
Yeah. And he was a good player too. And then of course after that we went to some at the time trendy restaurant in Calhoun Square. So was her. That's what she got. Well, I got the basketball game.
What a date night. Who knew the 1989 expansion Timberwolves would help bring Judd together with his future wife?
I also saw a game in the upper deck against the Magic that year. I saw a bunch of games. It was I was working at the Star Tribune the night that the Wolves won their first game at home. Was it Philadelphia or something like that? And the crowd pouring out was very enthusiastic.
It was I saw someone put a clip up of that. I just recently saw it either on YouTube or on Twitter of like the first game they ever won and the vibe inside.
Big Tony Campbell fan. I was a big TC fan.
TK TK was
TK was the Twins manager.
Yeah.
No, Top Cat.
So, well, there's a few things to clean up here, just the last 24, 48 hours, and even just some themes in the Wolves news bin. So,
anybody got any Timberwolves news?
Yeah. So the first one is, it's more a reaction to the news, and I want to throw a question out. We kind of touched on this a little bit yesterday with our guy Doogie from Channel 5. But to this point, the Timberwolves have done very little. Just like the Nickeil Alexander-Walker is obviously the biggest loss, and congrats to him, $62 million over 4 years. He gets a bag. The Wolves get a second-round pick back and a trade exception. But so they lose him. They're going to put probably Terrence Shannon Jr. higher up on the pecking order, Jalen Clark. So you're going to fill in those like 25 minutes a game with younger players that we've been pining for a while now. But the question that we landed on yesterday was, and the take that I had that's going around social media and there's a debate is, should Rob Dillingham start for the Timberwolves next year versus a 38-year-old Mike Conley in the absence of a third solution? Because right now, unless they bring somebody in, and this is the challenge, that if it's a Malcolm Brogdon who probably costs more than your taxpayer mid-level exception, maybe he's already agreed to it to terms by the time people hear this. Anyone that you would bring in that would move the needle in your rotation, you could argue should start, because the competition is a 38-year-old that faded big time last season and had a hard time even like getting shots up against the best teams in the playoffs in Mike Conley, and Dillingham, who has barely been given any leeway to grow or show what he is as a player. He's also, there's questions about his size. So like, anyone that you would bring in, you could probably say should start, but that right now, that has not taken place yet. So what are your thoughts on that, Judd? Just expanding that conversation, that question from yesterday. Is it outlandish to suggest that a team that went to the Western Conference Finals, a guy that was really nowhere near their playoff rotation, who's 20 years old, should be given the keys to start next to Anthony Edwards and play upwards of 25-plus minutes a night?
I think it's actually a very reasonable expectation or request, considering the fact that he was drafted eighth last summer in the draft. He's a top 10 pick. If you don't trust him at the start of next season, I think you have to ask some questions about why you obtained him. Like if you think he is not playable to a point where he can't start. But let's flip this to Conley. I mean, Mike Conley, God bless him. Great. You know what? He and Joe Ingles are great in the room. And so I certainly see their value in being a presence. And I think there's a big difference between saying, well, this guy is great in the room, so he should become an assistant coach. When you're an assistant coach, that's a very different role. Like, you are now on the other side of the fence there. You're a coach. You're in a role of authority. When you're a player, you're respected, but you are still with the guys in the room. But if you're telling me that you don't trust Dillingham at the first part of next season to start, and that Conley is going to have to play, I guess my question is Chris Finch going to find himself now playing Conley more than he should be playing? Because then we've got a problem. And look, as a whole, yes, the Wolves have not made a bunch of changes, but the Wolves also have a core group of young players who didn't play enough. I think as a unit in the first half of next season, those guys need to be sprinkled in far more. And that's a Chris Finch thing. I understand your loyalty to your vets. In some cases, that's probably the right move. But when you look at what the Timberwolves have, when you look at how Tim Conley drafts, which, by the way, I think is pretty damn well, and when you look at the small sample sizes of certain guys, and Dillingham did show some good things, I think you need to spend a decent portion of the first part of 2025-26 vetting that, taking a longer look. And it does not excite me, the fact that you're even talking about Mike Conley nearing 40 starting next season.
Yeah, I think there's three reasons why I would lean toward, again, it's predicated for Dillingham on if you think he can play in the NBA. And obviously if he can't, and you're going into year 2 and he was a top 10 pick and you give up assets to get there, it's like that opens up some bigger questions. But I think there's three main things I'm looking at. Number one, if he's good enough to be in your rotation and play meaningful minutes, 15, 20, 25 minutes, I think you're better off putting him with Anthony Edwards, putting him with players that give him a chance to be elevated and kind of ride the water level as it goes up, right? And I touched on these yesterday, but last year when Rob Dillingham and Anthony Edwards were on the court together almost 200 minutes, and those aren't garbage time minutes. When he's on the court with Terrence Shannon Jr. or Josh Minott, that's usually garbage time. When he's on the court with Anthony Edwards, those are like meaningful minutes. And he had a couple stretches where Conley was out and they're putting him out there. And the Timberwolves were plus 9 points per 100 possessions when Dillingham and Ant were on the court together. Also, when Dillingham and Naz Reid were on the court together for 300 plus minutes, the Wolves were a plus 10 per 100 possessions because, and this is my theory, I'm sure there's smarter people that could break down the film and explain the why, but Dillingham, even as raw as he is and even as unrefined as his game is, he is still a gravitational force player. Like, he can beat guys off the dribble. He can get into the paint. He can dish and pass. And Naz Reid sitting out on the corner as defenders have to pay attention to Dillingham, breaking down a defender getting in, like he gets some wide open corner three. So number one, it would just be give Dillingham the best chance to be the best player he can be by running him with the ones versus the twos. Now, of course, Conley has a better chemistry with Rudy Gobert, who at this point is going to be on your team going into the season. If Dillingham and Gobert have no chemistry at all and he can't incorporate Gobert at all into lobs or just little passes in the lane, then maybe that would alter your decision-making. But that brings me to point number 2, which is Mike Conley. I was curious. The Wolves want to win a championship, right? Like, they're not favored necessarily, and there's updated odds, but their goal is to win a championship. Okay, how many championship teams lately have had a 38-year-old in their playoff rotation? And I'm sure you could take this exercise back even further, but the Oklahoma City Thunder, they essentially had 8 main rotation players with a sprinkling of other players. The The oldest one, this is their playoff rotation, the oldest one, 30-year-old Alex Caruso. 8 years younger than Mike Conley. 2 years ago, the Celtics won the championship. And they essentially played in that series against the Mavericks an 8-man rotation with a sprinkling of some others. The oldest player in the Celtics playoff rotation was 33-year-old Drew Holiday. Again, a half-decade younger than Mike Conley is. Go back to the Nuggets when they won the championship, and they were playing also like an 8-man rotation, sometimes even tighter than that. And their oldest player was a 29-year-old Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So 9 years younger than Mike Conley. 2 more teams. I'll go back 2 more years. So you think, well, but the Warriors had some old guys a few years ago. Not really, man. When the Warriors won that championship, Steph Curry was 33, and he was by far the oldest player. Like Klay Thompson was kind of an older 31. Draymond Green. We think of that team as being old. Well, the oldest player in that rotation was Steph Curry, 5 years younger than present-day Mike Conley. And then I'll give you one more. The Bucks from 5 years ago, they won the championship playing like a 8 or 9 man rotation. And 35-year-old PJ Tucker was the oldest guy in that rotation, 3 years younger than present-day Mike Conley. So, like, I don't know that you can go into a season, and there's plenty of time to, like, get to a rotation that doesn't include a 38-year-old. But if you're planning on winning the championship, it's pretty rare that you have a 38-year-old as a starting and key piece to your rotation.
So I think what you're telling us, and it makes perfect sense, is this: either Dillingham is going to be trusted, or and I mean, look, he's going to struggle at times. Like you can't say, well, you're concerned about the chemistry with Gobert and then proceed to not play him with Gobert. But if this is the concern, and it should be, with Conley, I also think you're going to have to go get somebody else that you trust if you don't trust Dillingham completely or enough to play him, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't see it as being, by opening night, I don't see this as being a Dillingham starts, we're iffy on that, so Conley starts.
Yeah.
Like, I would find that to be a highly criticizable move if that is your choice when the Wolves open the regular season.
Yeah, and I know, and by the way, Dane Moore brought up a good point on his podcast earlier this week too. He was talking with Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press that maybe we're overblowing the point guard thing a little bit because Anthony Edwards handles the ball a lot and Julius Randle's back and he handles the ball a lot. So I would actually frame it as it's less about like point guard and more about trustworthy initiators of offense. And part of that is being able to get past the first defender. And I'll give you one more nugget on this here. Last year, the Timberwolves only had 2 players on the roster that averaged more than 5 drives per game. Like just in terms of, all right, we're in the half court. We're looking for someone to either come off pick and roll or beat someone off the dribble and drive to the hoop, get in deep, pull defenders in, either get a layup, get to the free throw line, or kick it out and start offense that way. Edwards and Julius Randle were the only 2 guys. Conley has a really hard time. Now, you can set a screen for him, but he has a really hard time driving to the hoop, right? Jaden McDaniels, he's got some of that in his game. They don't always unlock that part. But in limited minutes, their third in terms of like just aggressiveness and number of drives, their third best guy in that category was Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham in 10.5 minutes per game averaged 4 drives. If you double the minutes there, he's closer to 8, which would be easily third best on the team. Like he's a guy that can beat a defender off the dribble,
right? Start
some offense, put a team in the spin cycle. So whether you call him a point guard or like they need more players like that can start offense, in my opinion.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the OKC series sort of show us this?
Yeah.
Like it's fine. Like, yes, in December it's fine. Ant and Julius can take care of the ball or not, and you're probably still going to make the playoffs. But didn't we, like, everything I see is through the lens of the playoffs. Like when you get there, what do you have? Because that's when your any issues can be exploited, especially by teams that are talented. So I agree with Dane on the regular season. Like, it's frustrating at times, but you could probably work through it. But didn't the OKC series in particular show us what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the Alex Caruso test, right? Like, how many players do you feel comfortable when they're getting hounded by Alex Caruso, won't turn the ball over? And I mean, Julius Randle was like terrible at that in that series against Oklahoma City.
Absolutely.
So how many, in terms of some of it's ball security, and that's where like Dillingham has in his first year had a bunch of bad turnovers, and that's something that decision making and just like tightening of handle are going to factor in for him. But yeah, like who can stave off the aggressive defensive approach of some of these teams now? Like it's kind of a miracle that the Timberwolves made it to the Final Four in the NBA with very few reliable, trustworthy ball handlers. And I'm not saying that Dillingham is that right now. Conley is a more reliable ball handler, but the older he gets, it's just harder to find examples of 38-year-olds that are key pieces of teams that aspire to win a championship. So you got to start thinking life after Mike Conley.
Is it more likely, though, because with now gone, so that's 25 minutes, a guy who's averaging 25 minutes a game, is it more likely that Dillingham takes some of that role? Like, and it's not, started 10 games, mostly was a bench dude for them, coming off the bench, playing some significant minutes. Instead of just, I guess, shoehorning Dillingham, probably should be the starting point guard, or it needs to run with Anthony Edwards. Is it more likely that you can replicate the minutes into Dillingham? I'm not saying they're the same player, but just, swapping in that guy for these minutes.
I think you're going to have mathematically, so Nikhil played all 82 at 25 minutes a night, so that's easy math. So Conley played 71 at 25 minutes a night. I think you shave at least 5 minutes off that per game total, maybe even more. But let's say you shave 5 minutes off the Conley. That gives you 30 extra minutes per game, essentially, for Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., and some Jalen Clark. And those guys, like, there were some minutes sprinkled in throughout. So, yeah, it's going to be kind of a combination, and it's going to be – and who knows, like, maybe Dante DiVincenzo takes a step forward after another year, too, and becomes someone that can fill maybe some of the ball handler duties. They tried that at different times last year. He's not a true point guard. But, yeah, like, there's like 30 extra minutes per game to go around, to Dex's question.
So, Phil, on Dillingham, do you think he's a young player who just needs to play to improve, or do you think, for instance, from a ball handling aspect, that he's just not that good? So, like, is this experience? Because if it's experience,
I think he's got some wiggle. Like he's.
But I'm saying Chris Finchton just has to play him. Like, that's the point.
But what would happen is, like, you would watch these games where, okay, it's a Dillingham game, and he's going to be out there for his two different stints for 6 minutes in the first half, 6 minutes in the second half. And in the 6 minutes of the first, which you could argue is not enough, but you know that's how Finch rolled.
Right.
But then I feel like half the time he would do something in those first 6 minutes. He would like make a really bad pass, or he'd get cooked on defense or something. And you could visibly see Finch like exasperated or like turning to one of his assistants and bitching about it. And then Dillingham wouldn't get the shift in the second half. He wouldn't even get the extra 6 minutes. There at some point, I don't think they're just going to like keep incubating him and he's going to emerge as this like mistake-free, fully formed player.
Correct.
At age 20, 21, it's like you can't just hide him for 3 years. You're going to have to at some point push him out into the deep end, live with some of the mistakes, but also we're so hung up on like, well, he's kind of a turnover guy or he's a young player. Right, but he's also like awesome at getting to the paint and distributing and passing, and he can shoot. And obviously the pairing with Anthony Edwards when they were allowed to play together worked well statistically. It like the evidence is there in front of you. So I don't know. I don't think it should be a controversial take to say that you need to wean yourself off of a 38-year-old point guard that faded big time in the biggest games and was a complete non-factor. Like he was a non-factor to score 10 points in a playoff game with a team that had championship aspirations. Dillingham gives you a chance to drop 20 or 25 and be a running mate, even as a young player.
Yeah. If what you're saying is a controversial take, then you're basically not you, but then the person saying that's a controversial take is essentially saying that the Wolves made a mistake.
Yeah, what's
Because
the solution then? Because I don't think the solution is more Conley. And
No.
at this point, I don't know that the solution is like a vet minimum point guard that's going to come save the day.
do you draft a guy? I mean, name me the sport that you draft a guy top 10 and then say, well, you know what? Nah, not this year.
Yeah.
No, not this year. And so, yeah, I actually think it would be more of a controversial discussion if you said you don't think that he can play much next season.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I'm telling you, like
Now we got problems.
Oklahoma City, they're running out 22, 21-year-olds. They're running out like, and that team is a force. And a lot of those guys who are, there's a difference between like a 7-foot Chet Holmgren, who even if he's kind of unrefined is still 7 feet and can block shots and do his thing. So it's a little bit apples to oranges, but yeah, it's just there's a lot of things that he could provide if you allow it to take place. And Summer League, if he plays in Summer League, if he really struggles in Summer League, then my take on this might change in a month from now. It's like, okay, if you can't even go in and like dominate Summer League after 2 years and being in an NBA locker room and having Mike Conley give you advice and stuff, then what are we doing here? So, by the way, new title odds are out as of yesterday.
Hey, Phil, is that Timberwolves news I see?
You darn right it is, Judd.
It never ends.
And these new title odds are sponsored in part here on Flagrant Howls by Safeside Barbecue. Barbecue season, baby.
I got one word for you, boys. Brisket. How does that sound? How does this sound? Brisket cut to order. If that sounds as delicious to you as it does to me, then let me tell you about my good friends at Safeside Barbecue Food Truck, the best food truck in the West Metro. Absolutely outstanding. Look at that right there. If you're watching this, you're like, oh my God, how do I get that? 100% wood-fired, smoking, juicy, savory, tender meat. Everything is homemade. Bread is made to order for the sandwiches right there. I mean, that bread. Find them at SafesideBBQ.com on Facebook, where they will have where their truck location is next. Again, best food truck in the West Metro. Fantastic barbecue. How do you find them? SafesideBBQ.com.
Also, we should shout out Parlor, too. One of the best burgers in town. Parlor, expanding their empire as well in the Twin Cities.
Speaking of, the West Metro is alive and well. It's thriving. How so? Because Parlor can now be found not only in St. Paul, near the X, soon to be something else. It can not only be found in the North Loop, former home of Dex, but also can now be found in Excelsior. If you're going to go spend a day on the lake, I'm going to tell you right now, check out Parlor. We've been talking about the burger. It's fantastic forever. I've been telling you about the chicken sandwich, which I absolutely love. Craft cocktail menu is fantastic. It's a supper club and a regular Parlor bar in Excelsior. So any one of the three, you're going to find the same great food, great service, great times. Parlor in Excelsior. West Metro, absolutely thriving right now. I love Timberwolves news.
All right, we got new title odds here after the Nuggets. The Nuggets have made some really savvy, clever moves. Michael Porter Jr.'s contract out, and you bring in was it Cam Johnson? They brought in like 3 players for the price of 1. So it's Oklahoma City Thunder. This is according to ESPN Bet, are still heavy favorites to win the championship next year, plus 240. Denver Nuggets plus 800 are back up to number 2. So retooling that team around Nikola Jokic. You got David Adelman as the first-year head coach.
They took the Thunder to 7 games with basically 2 guys playing well.
Yeah. They did, and their roster I think is inarguably better now than it was when they lost in 7 to the Thunder. Yep. But the Nuggets are tied with the Rockets and Kevin Durant and company at plus 800, followed by the Cavaliers plus 900, tied with the Knicks. The Orlando Magic at plus 1100 now after the Desmond Bane acquisition.
Wow,
interesting.
And Tyus Jones.
Okay,
and then the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 1,500, kind of standing pat, but still the 7th best odds to win the LOB, according to ESPN Bet. Just ahead of Lakers, Clippers, Hawks, Warriors, and then the Jason Tatumless and Kristaps Porzingis-less.
Tingus Pingus.
And who else? Horford. I'm trying to think of who else they lost. Drew Holiday. But they got Garza, and they got Josh Minott now. The Boston Celtics. Boston team's always stealing our legendary athletes. Randy Moss, David Ortiz, Kevin Garnett, Luka Garza, Josh Minott. And then the Mavericks come in further down this list too. So I don't know, what are your thoughts? The Wolves are still regarded as the 7th most likely team to win the championship.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, the Wolves have not made big moves, so I think that they will probably just stay about the same, but it's still a good team. It's still, I think that's a probably fair place. So Orlando, you said, is in front of them slightly?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
That's an interesting
the
one.
East is wide. Part of this is like the Eastern Conference, there's just wide open pathways to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Hey, what's your opinion of the Rockets, who were really good, young, rising team with the Durant trade? Does Durant raise them as a championship team by a lot? Like, what does he do at the end of the day for a franchise that definitely looks like they're thriving? Yeah,
he fills their absolute biggest need, which is shot making and a half court bucket getter. You know, the Rockets have a lot of great qualities. Scoring in the half court against the best teams in the playoff bracket was a problem for them. But yeah, you add him and then just some of the incredible talent they have, all under the age of like 23. So he's coming in here and he's kind of looking at like almost a version of Oklahoma City from like 15 years ago or something with some of these younger players on that roster. But yeah, he pretty uniquely helps fill one of their, if not their biggest need. And they didn't have to give up a ton. Like they didn't have to sacrifice the core of what they're doing to bring him in. And I think that was part of his demands during these trade talks, was like, okay, I don't want a team to give up the farm for me, because whatever team I'm going to, I don't want it to be gutted. So it's just me. Like the Suns were, it was basically him, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, and a bunch of random dudes. So yeah, the Rockets are going to be a problem. But you know, this is kind of the case last year where the Wolves were not like regarded as a title contender. They were fighting for the 6th seed for the entire year. And then boom, you get into the playoffs and it's like, okay, yeah, the Wolves are still, but the West is ridiculous, man. Like it seems like, has any team taken a major step back that matters? Like every team is taking a step forward. I mean, there's some injuries that have kind of derailed things, but it's just going to be a fight. And then in the East, who the hell knows what the bottom of that bracket's going to look like. One more thing here, just an interesting nugget.
Anybody got any Timberwolves news?
So just another tentacle here. Like Dex asked about the 25 or 30 minutes that are going to become available post Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I think you're going to fill those minutes likely with just young athletic players. Terrence Shannon Jr., who's a freight train, getting up and down the court, transition just like he was in college. Jalen Clark can push tempo. And that's one thing I would love to see the Timberwolves improve upon here. Last year, boys, they were 29th in the NBA in transition points per game, ahead of only the Charlotte Hornets. And in terms of like frequency of transition, so like what percentage of your possessions started with a transition play? And they were near the bottom of that category too, 4th from the bottom. So 27th in the NBA. Just in like frequency of transition. So we talk about like all these different ways, like Anthony Edwards' mid-range game could boost your offense. Unlocking Jaden McDaniels maybe in the half court. But by just pushing tempo more, and some of that is having players that are able to and willing to, I'd love to see those numbers go up. And I think more Terrence Shannon Jr., maybe even more Rob Dillingham and some more Jalen Clark, just guys that play with energy, that are athletic, that are young, fresh-legged, and also expanding your rotation from 7.5 to maybe like 9. There's some meat on the bone there, like 5 to 10 points per game by just pushing tempo that you could tap into. So, I mean, look at the Pacers, for God's sakes, and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, that's definitely an area they just have to improve, and whether that's, I think that could be fun with Dillingham. I don't know if that's starting. I don't know if that's as like your starting point guard, but there's options there. As much as Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be missed from this team, I'm intrigued by how they kind of hodgepodge that, or how they go about fixing that, because they have plenty of options in the house internally to make that happen.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I think we spent like 2.5 weeks, and I see some people in the Flagrant Howls YouTube comment section poking at us for this. By the way, thank you guys. We're almost to 6,000 subscribers.
Woo! Really? No,
So
wow.
yeah, click that subscribe button, that like button on the Flagrant Howls YouTube channel. Such a fun community. But you guys just spent 2 or 3 weeks. You spent a month going through trade iterations. I promise you, whatever we did on this show, Tim Conley and Matt Lloyd in that front office did 100 times more trade iterations, and they just landed on, hey, we're not gonna do something stupid or short-sighted or something that takes assets off the table for future flexibility. Maybe there's still something coming here, but there are some pathways for them, even just kind of running it back, to get better in 2025-26. And it's gonna be fun to see kind of how this thing comes. They do still need at least one more player to get to 14 on their active roster. But yeah, I don't know. It was fun speculating on trades, but
Yeah, why wouldn't you speculate
like
on trades?
gonna,
I saw some pushback on our positivity, which I sort of get more than the trade stuff. The trade stuff is, I mean, my God, it's our foundation.
This has turned into a Tim Connolly slurp fest, I
Slurp
believe
fest,
was one of the
slurp fest.
comments.
Well, and look, you know what? I am excited by their young players. I think that the young players are going to be fun. I think they've got some talent there. Perhaps they'll be proven completely wrong. I don't know. But that's why I don't know it's fair to say they are running it back. When you run it back, I think of a veteran team that's not going to budge. So like guys don't play, like you're going to see the same product, the same players, right? In my opinion, what I would call this is an evolution of the roster,
Sure.
which to me is not the same as the 2009 Vikings saying, let's get everybody back for 2010. And then it falls apart. I'm not a fan of that.
I agree. I think you're right. Like running it back is literally no changes, nothing whatsoever. And if they do continue to limit minutes for some of these younger players, then all right, now there's a bigger discussion to be had. But I don't think that's what's going to happen.
I don't think there is a case to be made on Dillingham. I guess we can talk about it, but I don't think there's a case to be made on Jalen Clark or Terrence Shannon Jr. not playing a lot more.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, man, you need like that. Just
that has to happen.
The force of Terrence Shannon Jr.
Yeah.
The burst that he plays with, transition, like we just talked about.
He changes game flow, man.
He does. Yep, and especially in the regular season where there's just some nights where teams, including the Timberwolves, you're not playing at Game 6 Western Conference semifinals level intensity on a Tuesday night in December. But if you are a young player trying to play for, like, look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Not that he was thinking about this every step of his last 2 or 3 years, but that's a guy that, like, he was looking for a bag at some point, $50 or $60 million. And so you've got it in your mind that you're trying to help the team win, but you're also if you just play your ass off and work your ass off in the offseason to get better, at some point you're going to go get a $62 million contract.
Yep.
And when you're a late first-round pick like a Terrence Shannon Jr., and you're looking around the league, and we can do more on this maybe like next week, for anyone that has issue with like the Julius Randle contract, for instance, it is wild how many players make $30, $35, $40 million a year playing NBA basketball right now. Guys that would have no business, like DeAndre Ayton was making $35.5 million last year to be a malcontent. James Harden at the tail end of his career making $36.5 million to just step back all night and shoot ridiculous threes. So
this is why I would urge Wolves fans, don't mourn the love that you lost. Be excited about the next guy that you're going to fall in love with and who might leave someday, and you'll mourn him. Like if Terrence Shannon Jr. plays a lot, I think he's going to become a instant crowd favorite.
Yeah.
With that style, I think he's a different player, but I think he becomes your new as far as, oh my God, I love watching this guy play.
Jalen Clark, I'd put him in the same category. Like they're both, and credit to Nickeil he was a first round pick and showed some flashes, before he got to Minnesota, but Minnesota's coaches have really refined him to be the player that was so impactful
Yes.
For back-to-back
And-
Western Conference Finals teams. And it's the same development staff that will get their hands on these other guys and has had their hands on them.
Good front offices, starting with them, they bring in guys like this. Like we were conditioned for a long time to a lot of slappies, right? Like, we'll take a flyer on this guy, and okay, he's not good. But this is what good organizations do. They bring in guys that you fall in love with because it's like, where did you find this guy?
Yeah, you kind of create them.
Exactly right.
So,
Yep.
So that's your latest
Slurp Fest.
Wolves news, your latest Slurp Fest.
Slurp
Tim
Fest.
Conley wants more Timberwolves news.
Hey, I didn't say that, Deck. Somebody else said that.
Oh, thank you.
We'll put it in the new intro. This is Flagrant Howls, a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, and a Tim Connolly daily Slurp Fest.
Oh, God.